Welcome to Holy Ground Motherhood, a space for encouragement, reflection, and a reminder that the daily, ordinary work of motherhood is sacred and significant. I'm Julia Geiger, and each episode will explore the sacred in the messy, the holy in the mundane, and look for the Lord's work in the everyday moments of raising children. So take a breath, kick off your sandals, and let's walk together on this holy ground of motherhood. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today's guest is someone who is really special to me. She was my high school creative writing teacher. Honestly, the kind of teacher who doesn't just teach you how to write, but teaches you how to see and how to love books and how to think critically and love writing. And she's also a mom of 2 daughters who are now grown up. And this year, she is stepping into a new season as a published author. I am so excited to talk with her about creativity, motherhood across seasons, and what it looks like to keep listening to God's voice over a lifetime. And I am honored to welcome Mandy Houk. How are you doing?
I'm good. Don't make me cry right before we start. That was lovely. Thank you for your words. I'm so excited that you invited me because I just love any excuse to spend time with you.
It's fun. I mean, we caught up a few months ago, I guess it
Yeah,
was.
August. Yeah.
Before that, it had been almost a decade since I had seen you.
Yeah.
But we've always kept up on social media and things
hmm
like that. And it's super special. There are not any other high school teachers in my life that I keep up with.
Oh, I love hearing that.
I think it's a pretty rare and special thing. So before we talk about writing or motherhood, can you talk a little bit about who you are in this season of life?
So, like you said, our 2 daughters, who are good friends of yours, are grown. They are 27 and 30 now, which is crazy. Yeah, it's the whole empty nest thing, but it's kind of interesting in our house because my husband retired right as I started actually pursuing it and finding success with it came late for me. So as he is retiring, I'm like actually pursuing this sort of second phase of or third or whatever. A new chapter. Pun anyway, whatever. Pun not intended. But yeah, kind of a new chapter in my life. Still very hard for me to absorb that is
Sure.
actually happening.
So to kind of go back in time a little
Yes.
bit for you, what did the early days of motherhood look like? Like your girls were little.
Well, I was a very uptight mom. I was a very uptight.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yes. A very uptight person. Probably you didn't see that as much because most of your experiences with me centered on things that I loved, teaching and writing. So probably you didn't see that side of me.
No.
In my house growing up, the phrase that was used a lot in my house was you're representing the family. So I can even remember playing the piano for my church at like 10 years old. And right as I was getting up from the pew, my mom like reached over and was like, remember, you're representing the family. And I'm like, oh no. So of course I made a horrible mistake. So anyway,
Oh.
so I sort of was raised with that everything I did needed to be worthy in some way and it
Mm.
needed to be right. There was a right and a wrong way to do things. I also was really raised with a responsibility to keep the family happy. I've grown up with this sense of, I've carried with me this sense that it depends on me. You know, the verse in Romans 12, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. It was
Yep.
only recently that I realized I used to read that like, it depends on you, which is not what it means. So, but that's sort of the way that I carried myself. The sad thing is, when I became a mother, something that was super important to me was to not make my children feel that way. I wanted them to feel safe to fail. I actually wrote a letter to Emmy, that's my oldest. When I was pregnant with her, I wrote a letter to her saying, I want you to always know that you're safe to fail. But just by virtue of the fact that I was so stressed out that I was going to fail as a mother, it carried over. I had a conversation with Emmy just a few years ago. She's the one who's 30 now. Just a couple of years ago, I found out that she felt that same sense that I did. You were representing the family. And she's like, because I could always tell when you were worried about my behavior. And I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, but I was worried about how I was doing as a mother. I was never, but she absorbed that from me. So she thought I was judging her when really I was judging me. So I would say I was a much better mother in private than I was in public, in particular around my family. My sister did not have any children. So I was the only mother. The two grandchildren, that was it. It was my girls. And when I was around my mom and dad and sister, I knew I was being watched and evaluated. And unfortunately, that, of course, the girls absorbed that too. I would say when it was just the girls and me, or the girls and me and my sweet husband, I was a very fun mom and goofy, which is sort of a coping mechanism for me.
Mm.
But hey, it worked. I would guess, children are sitting right here, but we have had these conversations that it was a little confusing to be my kid because sometimes I was this super fun, goofy. Like when I was homeschooling, if they were having a hard time with something, I would actually pull out pom poms. I actually had pom poms. I can't remember why, and I'm not coordinated, but I would literally like do cheers for them. Like, you can do this math problem. Woo! And
How I can just so perfectly picture you doing that is so great. Because I think the fun and goofy is how I think of you, because that's what I saw in you as a teacher. So it's interesting to hear, just the different side.
yeah. Well, if my mom and dad had been in the room when I was teaching, you would not have seen that.
Sure.
But the girls, especially when they were super young, it's not like they could be like, "Oh, we're with Granny and Granddaddy right now, so that's why mom's being like this." So I was just a very different person in different scenarios, which makes me sad. But I would say, I think the best thing I did as a mother is to always apologize when I knew I had done something that hurt them. And that was something I never, ever, ever, ever heard growing up. And so I always apologize as soon as I possibly could. In the same way that we're not perfect people, we can't live sinless lives. We can't be sinless mothers.
Unfortunately.
I know, dang it.
Yeah, that's so interesting how you ended up, you wanted them to feel like they could fail, but because you still felt like you couldn't, they ended up catching more of what you were living rather than what you were saying, which is
Yeah.
so interesting. Do you feel like that started to change as they got older, or do you feel like that didn't really change in you until maybe they were adults?
I remember I was listening to your podcast, to the episode with your mom, and she talked about how as the kids get older, moms that are in your stage are like, "Oh no, I don't want them to grow up." And there is that part of it, but oh my gosh, I agree with your mom. Every new stage is like it's a new kind of blooming and it's just amazing. And so I do think I did loosen up. Girls got older and I was able to just have more fun with them and not worry about potty training and all of the when you have little kids, like everything, it's minutia, like one moment to the next. You're like, they're napping for what, an hour and a half? And then all of a sudden you're on again and you have to tie their shoes and you have to teach them how to read. And it's so intense. So as they got older and I had less, I'm like, okay, they know how to read now. Whew, that's done, and they can tie their shoes. And so as they got more independent, I could breathe more and I learned more and we just had more fun. And then just as they've gotten into adulthood in particular, like it's cute because the like Bethany and I, my younger daughter, just the other day, especially as they've gotten older, I've had to realize, okay, they are mine, my children, but they're not like they're not representing the family. They're not an extension of me. So their stories aren't my stories to tell. In particular, like once they start dating and stuff, I would just like, "Bleh," I don't think I was as bad as like Mrs. Bennett in Pride and Prejudice.
It's
Bethany is not here to dispute
a
that.
high
So we'll
bar.
just, yeah. Right. But we were having a conversation with someone and I didn't bring something up that normally I would have. She was like, "You didn't, spill whatever." And then I was like, "I'm growing." And she goes, "You so are." And
Love
it
that.
was just, I love having adult children because they are so gracious with me and they love everything I'm learning as I am back in therapy because my mom just passed away. So all these new things just came up. I am so rambly, but hey, You knew that when you invited me because this is how I taught my classes.
Give me the rambles. It really was. It's funny when you're like, "Oh, I'm going on a tangent." I'm like, the entire class was like just tangents.
I will say I was late diagnosed ADHD a couple years ago, and
There you
literally
go.
every student I'm still in contact with, they're like, "Duh."
Yeah. So how long did you homeschool for?
I started because this will track with everything I said before. I started when Emmy was 4 because I thought if I don't do this right, no one will ever know because then I'll just enroll her in kindergarten and I won't have to explain where she was because 4 years old is preschool. So I started when she was 4 and she just I mean, we loved it. It was so much fun. That's really when I figured out I love teaching. I just love that moment of like, oh, and just being there to witness it is such a joy. And to watch kids discover their abilities and overcome their challenges is just magical. So I started when Emmy was 4, and then Bethany is 3 years younger than her. And I had to start sooner with Bethany because she was so dang precocious. I would be teaching Emmy and then Bethany would be like coming in and doing the Pledge of Allegiance with us at like 3 years old. And I'm like, all right, I have to teach you something just to get you out of my hair. And then we ended up in a place of unemployment. And so I needed to try to get a job. We enrolled in the school where I met you, which was a hybrid. So they entered the hybrid when Bethany was they were late elementary, early middle school. So middle school and high school was sort of a jumble of like they would take a certain number of classes and but then I was still their teacher because I taught at the school.
Did you just teach creative writing or did you ever teach like English?
Oh, I taught literature also. I forgot I didn't have you. Like I started the creative writing class at that school.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
taught my first year there, which was the first year of the school. I taught 7th grade, 8th grade, and 11th, which was American literature. And then I was like, please, I will never teach 7th grade again. I can't handle the classroom management, but I asked if I could teach creative writing.
So when you enrolled the girls in the university school, the school that I went to and that you taught at, it was that year that you started teaching, or like how did that come about?
It was the first year of the school. The plan was that Peter was going to teach math and science, and he did. I was going to stay home and pursue writing because I had wanted to, but they couldn't fully staff the school and they had a gap. And they're like, you homeschool and you teach Sunday school kinda. So surely you can just teach English. And so I remember I told them, I'm like, I will only do it if you can't find anyone else. Which I think, as we all know, once you get a yes, you're
They're
not going
like,
to keep
we're not going to
looking.
look very hard.
Right. They're like, you just said yeah. So I taught 7th, 8th, and 11th, hit the ground running, tripping. But 11th grade, I was like, oh my gosh, I love teaching. I love it.
I love that.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Was it weird to, because I'm sure there were times where you were your kid's teacher.
Oh yeah.
I mean, which you were used to that, but also in a classroom setting, was that a weird transition for you guys or did it just feel pretty natural?
The girls, they told me they liked it. But I will say, I graded them harder.
Mm.
I remember I would be like, "Oh, Bethany did this paper is perfect." And I did like the rubric. I would always feel guilty if she got the highest grade in the class. But like, yeah,
She did the best.
she did. Yeah, I actually now that I think about it, I never had Emmy for literature. I had her for the aforementioned economics class. And then I also had her for creative writing. But Bethany, I had Bethany twice for literature, but then also creative writing. But yeah, I would always grade her harder. But she ended up valedictorian out of what, 12 people. But
Right. This high stakes
woohoo!
competition. That makes sense, honestly. I was definitely friends with both your girls. I was never like super, super close with either of them though. So, I mean, maybe you can speak to this, but it really seemed like neither of them are troublemakers. They were not ever like get into trouble type kids. Just even in so I did theater with both of her daughters and just, I mean, the most like delightful girls, like super kind, super
Aw.
thoughtful of other people. So like, do you have anything that you feel like you were really intentional about that you feel like fostered that, or do you feel like that was kind of a happy accident?
You know, it's funny because when I just the other day, somebody who knows Bethany and me, he's actually our favorite waiter at a restaurant we all go to regularly. And he was like, "You raised such a good girl." And I always try to defer and be like, "Oh, that's just who they are." But he was like, "Stop." And so I'm like, "Well, okay." I mean, I guess I was there for it. Bethany was sitting there and she was like, "It's okay to say that you raised a good kid because you're insulting me if you don't." So it's like this whole, yeah, jumbled mess. My mom was raised with a sister who ended up they were estranged. I never met her. And then my sister and I are not close. We coexist, it's fine, but yeah, it was very difficult growing up. Honestly, when I found out that Bethany was a girl and I was going to have two girls, I cried because I was like, "Oh no," because my whole experience is a set of two girls is like doomed. That was what so I set out to gather information from my friends who were close with their sisters specifically. Kind of the recurring theme that I would hear from these women who were close with their sisters is that their mother always reminded them, you need to take care of one another because friends and up to a certain point, boys will come and go, and even your dad and I will go. But you guys, you have to take care and nurture that relationship. And so that was key for me. And one thing, we had the please stop rule because one of the main issues in my family growing up is that teasing was not just allowed, but it was kind of encouraged. Like my dad thought it was funny. And I don't like teasing or being teased. It's just not the way my my heart was made.
Sure.
So even though I was in this heavily teasing family, I never liked it. But I was the youngest and I was the brunt of the joke. And I was chunky and had braces and I was walking fodder for teasing. And my sister used to do stuff to me, like tickle me beyond it was fun. Or, and when I would say stop, stop, and there would be no stopping. There I was powerless. And so that was like my first rule. And that would have been true if I'd had boy and girl, whatever. But that was my first thing. The please stop rule was if your sister says please stop, you stop. No question, which of course, as children will do. I remember, I think when they were like 4 and 7, I remember this way. She didn't say, please stop. And I'm like, all right, look, if you know she wants you to stop,
Right.
stop. Legalist little guys. To me, I was just like trying to make sure their experience with one another didn't match the worst times of my childhood. But essentially, what I was teaching them was to set boundaries and to honor boundaries. And I mean, they are really good friends. Until Emmy started dating her now husband, she would tell everyone, even me, that Bethany was her favorite person on the planet. And I would be like, fine, but I'm like, I understand, you know? And I mean, they lived together after college, they're really good friends. It wasn't perfect. I mean, the fact that you viewed them that way is wonderful to hear. And that's my best guess is just because I taught them how to treat each other,
Yeah, that makes
I guess.
sense.
Yeah.
What did your faith look like when, the girls were younger and as they were growing up, and how did that maybe shift throughout the years?
In the same way that I treated everything else, I white knuckled kind of everything and I white knuckled my faith. And I was raised Presbyterian, but then when I went to college, the student ministry that I ended up falling into first was Southern Baptist. And so I ended up very fundamentalist, black and white. And because I had that mindset that everything depended on me, I really didn't feel God's grace. I like knew about it, but I didn't experience it very in a deep way because I was constantly like evaluating how am I doing? How am I doing as a wife? How am I doing as a Christian? How am I doing as a mom? Kind of makes me sad. This sounds dumb, but it makes me a little bit sad for Jesus because I can sort of when I go back, I can think about him like standing right there, like in me and around me and waiting for me to like breathe and just the tenderness that I'm sure he felt for me that I was not grasping. even the spiritual habits. Like I'm like, okay, girls, okay, we're gonna memorize these verses. And it was external and like check checking off boxes, I would say. Yeah, I felt like there was a right way to do things and I needed to make sure I was doing it right. So, because I homeschooled, we had time to go to a women's Bible study every week and I ended up in leadership. It was most people have heard of BSF, the an offshoot of BSF was CBS. So I was community Bible study. So I ended up in leadership and community Bible study. But then the saddest thing is the days that we would go would be like the most stressful. I mean, you know what it's like to try to get your kid ready for church.
Anything.
Yeah, get ready for anything, right? But community Bible study in particular, because the leaders had to get there at 7:30 in the morning. So I had to
Oh
like get my I
gosh.
know. And this was from when I think I started when the girls Bethany was like, I don't even know if she was 2 when we started doing community Bible study. So by the time I was a leader, they were probably like 4 and 7. And so I had these itty bitty girls and I'm like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And I mean, the grace of God, thank you, Lord, that they know him and have walked with him. And I don't know, somehow they were able to see him in a way in spite of my rigidity. But over the past several years, even since I know you, I know we talked about this when we connected in August. Like, I think back to the discussions I had with students, and I'm like, oh, I would rephrase that now. Like, the
Yeah.
way that I view God, the way that I know Him is very different than how I used to know Him. He's not a concept or a goal or a judge. Something that I had to realize, and I've actually told, I have young mom friends at my church. I think it's really easy for us as mothers. Whew, I don't want to cry. I felt like I'm raising these children. Like I almost had this feeling like he was looking over my shoulder, like, do it right. I love them. But hello, I I am his child, just as they are. And he doesn't view me first as the mother of Emmy and Bethany. He doesn't view me first as the wife of Peter. Those roles matter to him, but I'm his Mandy. That's who I am. I'm his first, you know?
I just got chills.
Oh, good.
I needed to hear that.
Good. In his sermon, The Weight of Glory, he says, there is no ordinary person. You have never met a mere mortal. So your children, they are not mere mortals, but neither are you. We as moms, we have to set ourselves aside. We have to. Like there's a joke, what is the definition of a mother? She's the one who says when there's 4 people and only 3 pieces of pie, she's the one who says, "Oh, I never liked pie." That's sort of the mother thing, and that's okay, but we have to remember to sit at Jesus's feet as ourselves, not with the other roles so heavy on who we are, you know?
Yeah. That's so good. Was there an event or something that started to shift that, or do you feel like it just sort of changed slowly over time?
I think part of it is it goes back to my family of origin. My father died when I was barely 30, and then we lived several hours away from my mom. Then when we moved out here, my mom was like, "Ooh, I want to live close to my grandbabies." She didn't want to before because we lived in Southern California and we didn't even like blah, Southern California. So I'm like, I don't blame you for not wanting to live near us. I don't want to be here either. So, but when we moved out here, she was like, oh, I'm coming. So having my mom watch me parent sort of made me, I think, see the difference in the way we were parenting. And then it allowed me to change some things about my parenting that like to release, to let go a little, but then also just as my girls matured and I was able to like start to breathe more and to see who they were becoming. And you also, one of the coolest things about having older children is learning from them. And so seeing the way each of them, the relationship they had with the Lord made me want more of what they had, a different way of viewing Jesus. And Emmy especially because Emmy has health issues like autoimmune, migraines, all these undiagnosed. She's a mystery. She's a medical marvel. So she lives with chronic pain. And just to watch the way that she felt loved and comforted by Jesus all the time, even in her pain, made me see it's almost easier to see his love act on someone else's life. It was for me. It was easier for me to view their relationship than to really see how he looked at me. I think over time I was able to begin absorbing, like, oh, he sees me the way he sees Emmy. And then also, frankly, the way things have changed in our country in the last 10 years, I've started to be more discerning as far as what does God ask of us? And how important is it that we do things quote unquote exactly right? And what does exactly right mean? Like maybe he's not asking me to ascribe all of this extra requirements. It's almost pharisaical, some of the things. And I started to read more widely. Brennan Manning is one of my favorite authors. The Relentless Tenderness of Jesus is absolutely beautiful. Also the Ragamuffin Gospel. He helped me see like the difference between the teachings of Jesus and Western evangelicalism. It's not all lining up. And the real clincher was when I did, and it was in 2020, uh, I did Jen Wilkins' study of the Sermon on the Mount. And having grown up in church, we've all read bits and pieces of the Sermon on the Mount, but I had never studied it entirety every week, like doing the homework, watching the lectures, the whole thing. And that just like blew a lot of my rigidity out of the water because I'm like, wait a minute, take a breath. And then also, I just really began to see more clearly it doesn't all depend on me, which extends to if I see someone, a believer or a non believer, doing something that I think doesn't match up to the Bible. Is it always my job to tell them that? Or do I need to wait for very specific instructions to tell them that? And that allowed me to let go of that thought that I don't even need to have an opinion about everything. Imagine that. I don't have to have an opinion on what other people do. If they ask me, I should seek to answer them the best way I can, but I need to trust the Holy Spirit to work in their heart, which I did it for my children. So I don't know why. I think that's a Western evangelical thing. We think we're supposed to be out there like taking notes, like the association people, homeowners association people with their clipboard who walk around
Yeah.
the neighborhood. Oh no,
The
that tree
grass
is.
is 1/4 of an inch too high.
Yeah, I sort of had that mentality,
Yeah.
especially I was always in leadership and I never really wanted to be. But I always ended up in like leadership, and then you feel like you have to like hold everyone accountable. Really? I don't know.
No,
So,
that's cool. I love that. I think that's really beautiful. I think that that's just such an important journey of faith of like learning what does it look like to love people and to let grace penetrate like every corner of my life. And I think that I've really seen that in you. And even just because, like I said, like we're not having hour-long phone calls every week, but like we're engaging on social media and things like that. And I think it's been cool that even through the journey, I've been able to see like, oh, God's like done stuff in her heart. And I
oh,
think
yay.
that that's such a cool proof of our testimony is when like what God is doing, we don't even have to talk about it. It just like is evident,
Yeah.
in how we live our life. And I think that that's really awesome. But I've definitely seen like the past several years, like you kind of these like values of like, hey, taking care of the people around us and
Yeah.
loving people around us and putting other people first
Hmm.
in terms of loving them and having grace for
Hmm.
them. And just watching that has been very inspirational for me personally.
Oh, I
So,
appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah.
I think I've just let go of a lot of fear. I think a lot of stuff was just fear. And then just being able to say, "You know what?" And it's that whole "it doesn't all depend on me" thing again. Like, when I interact with someone, the rest of their life doesn't depend on this interaction. And if I can be obedient to this one conversation. Another thing that just in the past 3 years, I've been volunteering at this wonderful Christian home for single mothers who've escaped any combo of homelessness, abuse, and addiction. It's always abuse, and most of the time it has resulted in homelessness, and then sometimes there's also addiction. It's called Mary's Home. It's part of a larger national organization called Dream Centers. And so I went in there to teach writing. And then my husband and I also led a Bible study. And I would come in thinking, okay, I have to be like this example and like come in with this pressure on me to say the right thing. And I never said the right thing, but then you watch like what God's presence does. And then in particular, when we go to the graduations, because once the women finish the classes, they have a full on graduation with so cute with caps and gowns. And the way that they would greet us and everything they got from us just being there, I was like, I did not bring that to the table. That was God. And so the combo of watching what he could do with me when I didn't know what I was doing, but also watching the strength and resilience and joy of these women who have been through things I could not imagine. And just going, yeah, I'm learning from you. I know that that's so trite. I know people say that I learned so much more from blah, blah, blah. But oh my gosh, this is the most true example of that I've ever had in my 56 years is that these women are incredible. And they are incredible in that they have allowed God to guide them and show himself. They don't all come out of it believers yet,
Yeah, seeds were planted. That's
for
so
sure.
beautiful. I love also that creative writing was used in that because it's such a powerful thing. Like
Oh, yeah.
writing can really just bring out like whether you're writing like this is what happened to me today or like you're writing a story, you process through so much junk through writing. So were
Mhm.
you always creatively bent? Did you always want to be a writer? Like when did that start for you?
Okay, well, my mom, back to the achievement thing, taught us to read before we went to school. So I was 4 when I learned to read, and I immediately would write. I would write like goofy little poems and goofy stories, like immediately. I always did. And I was always in my head, back to that late diagnosis of ADHD. Hello. I was always daydreaming and not really there in the classroom. But that was actually a source of tension in my house because I think the quickest way to say it is I wasn't good at the things that my parents thought were important as far as success. And a lot of that is their generation. They were children in the depression. So you have to do what will pay the bills. And so I was like, math, I don't, whatever. Here, let me write a poem. Geography, I don't care. I'm going to sing a song. So no, I was always creatively bent. And they thought that was sweet and cute, but not useful. So I would want to be inside and be reading Charlotte's Web or drawing or writing or something. And they would be like, go outside and play tag with your sister, who was way faster than me and would always catch me and then tickle me. And then there we go. Which it was funny. I was like, I wonder why it never occurred to them to let me go outside and read. So I've always been creative, but for a lot of years, that was not a source of pride. It wasn't celebrated in the way it could have been. So that's why I didn't pursue it. I was afraid that I wasn't really good enough. I was afraid that it would hurt too much if I didn't succeed. So I did not major in English or writing. I started to, and then I freaked out and thought I would fail. So I actually majored in psychology, which a bachelor's in psychology is worthless. So I didn't because I didn't go to any graduate school at all.
Right.
But whatever. The funny thing is, I actually just now remembered this. Even though I was majoring in psychology, one of the papers I wrote ended up, my professor asked me permission to share it with her colleagues. So the writing was always there.
So then
So
when did you start to pursue that? Maybe even before you started to pursue it, did you always do it as a hobby, like even when your kids were
always.
young?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah. And like in college, like I would write song lyrics for my friends that wrote music. Oh, the boys with guitars, all the cute boys with the guitar. I would write song lyrics for them, and then they still never liked me. Like, I was always the little sister. "You're like a sister to me." Dang it.
Ew.
Anyway, I know, but no, I always wrote. I always had, like, poems and, like, essays. A lot of my prayers I would write, which fortunately I still have. I have this one notebook with, like, U2 and INXS stickers all over it that has writing. It was all very dramatic and angsty. I kept writing, and then I would write press releases, even though I one of my jobs, I ended up being like a secretary, but then the company was small enough that they would have me write their press releases. So I was writing was always happening. I just was never official. But then I went to a women's retreat, which is hilarious because sorry, if anyone, if y'all love women's retreats, go for it. I do not like, I just don't, I'm an introvert. I know I talk a lot, but I'm totally an introvert. So don't force me to be in a room with a bunch of people. But for whatever reason, I went to the women's retreat and I felt like a weight, but like a good kind of weight on my heart that God was like, I made you this way on purpose. You disobey me when you aren't being what I made you to be. And so I was like, I have to write now? Like, I have to actually try. And he was like, yeah. And so I went home and I'm like, well, God told me I have to write. And so I guess I have to look for an opportunity. And then I think the very next day I subscribed to World Magazine at the time. They were having their first ever, and as far as I know, I think the only, they had a short story writing contest because apparently they'd had a conversation in the editing room or something that Christian fiction was yucky. Um, and I'll try not to comment on that. Anyway, but so I was like, well, I have to enter this. So I entered it and I ended up being a top 10 finalist. And the finalists, one of the prizes of being a finalist was you got to submit a novel manuscript without having an agent, which of course I didn't have an agent, but I also didn't have a novel because that short story was the first piece of fiction I'd written since like high school. And so then I was like, well, I guess I need to write a novel. And so I like wrote a novel. It was terrible. So I wrote a novel. It took me a long time because I was still homeschooling. So the girls were able to homeschool on their own enough that I was able to write this novel. I had no idea what I was doing. So I wrote this. I basically just expanded the short story. By the time I got it finished and submitted, that publishing house had been eaten up by another publishing house. So I was like, oh, now I guess I can't. But by that time, I was like, apparently I can write novels. I bet I could do a better one. So then by that time, I think somewhere around then we had moved here. And so then I started another novel, Hope is the Thing with Feathers, named after the Emily Dickinson poem. So then with that one, I got an agent. He got a lot of good feedback from editors, but it was too literary and hard to place. So then I wrote another one. And so that is the one that I got a publisher for. So
So
yeah,
that is the one that is coming out. Is it coming out this year?
no, it comes out next year.
Okay.
So they accepted it. I signed the contract. I'm supposed to get the developmental edits any day now. And then by March 1st of this year, it has to be completely finalized, including like acknowledgments and dedication. It's a very small, very literary focused publisher. They mostly publish poetry. They don't publish very many novels. They don't publish very many books each year at all. They're very intentional with their promotion because since they're such a small house, they have to get eyes on the books in multiple ways. So they always submit their manuscripts to awards. And there are a lot of awards that if the book has already been published, there you can't submit the book to that. Do you know what I mean? So that's part of the reason there's such a long lead time because it's not coming out until like the fall of 2027.
What's maybe like one or a few things that really surprised you about what it takes to write and publish a book?
think I always knew this. I'm pretty sure I conveyed it to you guys in my classes, is that there are no hard and fast rules for how to write. Like, I do not write every day. Maybe I could publish more stuff if and I have had a couple short stories published. Sort of like parenting. There's no one way to do it. And you have to pursue it in a way that feels right to you, but at the same time, push yourself. I don't push myself enough. I need to push myself more. I'm going to as soon as I get the developmental edits. I have to have a deadline. How odd it feels to know that someone you don't know has read something that you wrote and it resonated with them. Like that is so magical. The gift that God has given us of beauty. And I think the same is true of paintings or anything, the way that our hearts can connect to each other through this medium it's not direct. Like I haven't met the woman who loved my book and wanted the publisher, but she loved it and it resonated with her. And even my rejection letters were really good. Like they loved my characters and it's really funny to think about like these characters are literally figments of my imagination, but somehow God gets in there and somehow it magically goes from my goofy brain through my words and then creates something. It creates an experience in someone else. Like that's so wild. That's wild.
I love that. When you look back, where do you see Jesus most clearly in the everyday, ordinary moments of motherhood?
I think just the way he filled in the gaps and that he makes something beautiful out of my fumbling attempts. The fact that the girls knew that I loved them, even in the moments when it looked like, I don't know what I looked like to them when I was stressed out. The fact that his grace covers all that and the way that he guided me in like the whole thing about the please stop rule seems so silly. And it seems like all I was trying to do was avoid arguments, which I kind of was, but he worked through me without even my total awareness of it. Like he did more through me in my unaware moments than he did all my like checklists.
I think that's an encouragement. It is to me, anyway.
Good.
All right. How would you encourage a mom to build her own village or support system if she doesn't feel like she already has one?
This one is huge because as a member of the homeschooling community, we did not homeschool for the same reason that a lot of people did around me. Even though I did say I was a very fearful person, I didn't homeschool so the girls would be like, you know, shielded from the world. I homeschooled because I remembered ADHD. I remembered the feeling of drowning in the classroom and feeling stupid when I didn't understand stuff and feeling frustrated when we didn't stay on a topic I wanted to stay on. So that was why. And I wanted them to see the beauty of learning and love learning for learning's sake. But when I tried to join homeschool communities, because that just made sense, I'm a homeschooler, therefore these will be my people. No, they were not. They were like, I remember I was in this one group where I could not believe it was crazy that I only had 2 children because all the rest of them had like multiples, which is fine, but they were just not my people. I wasn't their people either. And so don't look for the logical, like who you think your village will be might not be who your village is. I ended up in community theater. Not everyone there was a Christian, but wow, that felt a lot like my village. And look for the people that you feel like you can breathe and that that you can fail in front of and they won't like make face at you or look for people that are safe and it might just be one other person or two. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Look for people that you feel like you can breathe. That's so good. So, this season, we are talking all about spiritual disciplines, which is very exciting. Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, you did talk a little bit about like maybe sometimes you hit those a little bit checklisty, but
Yeah.
were there times where when you prioritize spiritual disciplines and like maybe it looked very different in motherhood because there had to be more grace in it, but that it ended up impacting you in a really positive way?
Yeah, I would say the most meaningful connections that I had with the girls about Jesus were at the breakfast table. It started out because I with memory verses, like all three, the two girls and I all memorized the chapter 12 in Romans chapter 12. But because we were doing that, we would end up talking about like, well, what does that mean? And so it ended up being sort of the the moments around the checklist thing that I was doing. So the fact that because we were memorizing Romans 12, I sat down with them at breakfast. Had we not been doing that, I probably would have just been running around and I wouldn't have, and then also in the car, listening to, hymns and worship music and being open to the conversations that spring from the rituals and not leaning so hard on the ritual. The ritual is a good jumping off point, but I think that's where God really works is in the edges of the thing that we think is core. And then also, I mean, community Bible study was huge because one of the reasons we did community Bible study instead of BSF is because community Bible study actually did homework pages for children. I think BSF does that now too, but it was always the same passages that the moms were studying. So we would do them together, but it would be their age level. And so that was a springboard for conversations. So those were really impactful, like core parts of our daily life and routine that God used.
Is there a verse or passage of scripture that has been significant in your journey of motherhood?
Yes, there is. The book of James, Peter laughs at me because every Bible I have, James is the book that's like most highlighted. I just love James. But James 1:17 in particular, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So for me, that verse like opens up something in my chest, like everything that he has given, everything that comes from his goodness and his glory is something we can hold, with our open hands, but we can hold it and we can, in spite of everything else, all the chaos that's going around us that is not of him, that is of the world, the gifts from him are pure and light, and he does not change. Even when our prayers go unanswered or we get a no or something tragic happens, it never changes who he is. He does not change like shifting shadows. And I just hold on to that, especially with my children, because oh my gosh, I'm just overwhelmed that he gave them, he put them in my life. I don't want to say gave them to me because that's, but he put them in my life. He allowed me to be their mom.
So awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. That's really good. All right. Well, that's all I have today. So
That's
thank
all,
you so
folks.
much. Yeah, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for joining this podcast and just being willing to share and be vulnerable. There were so many good nuggets in there. I really, really loved it. And I just really appreciate you being willing
Yeah.
to come on board.
Well, I love that you asked me. I appreciate the invitation. I loved spending time with you.
Yes. Yeah, it's
Thank
been
you.
good. Thank you for listening to the Holy Ground Motherhood podcast. My prayer is that you leave this conversation reminded that God is with you, even here, even now, in the middle of your ordinary moments. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to share it with another mom who might need that same reminder. If you want to dig a little deeper, you can find scripture references as well as links to my Instagram page and YouTube channel in the show notes. Until next time, may you find holy ground right where your feet are.